Okay, let's talk about Homie. We've had a great round today, 2 days ago, and Sunday last week. There's been a lot going on, and I think it'd be interesting to show how things progress, you know, when you're at a show for a couple of weeks and you can kind of make one step to the next. First, we have a really special whiskey here. This was given to me by Maria Teresa from Rib Academy. I'll link below there. She's amazing, and she brought me Fetty single malt whiskey. This is a Norwegian malt whiskey. Didn't know they made that. And you know, small. This is a batch of 6,500 bottles, so not, you know, huge production. You can tell by the color, especially in used barrels, not a lot of color, but that's because it was, you know, aged for 4 or 5 years. No problem there, because what matters is the flavor, not the color. You know, it smells a lot like I had a whiskey that I was given last year in the summer that was a malt whiskey from the Swiss Alps, and it was aged in the mountains with this rare barley variety. It smells a lot like that, and it smells also denser. You know, if you get like a blonde porter or blonde stout, where it's blonde, but when you smell it and you drink it, it's like a stout. It's kind of like that. The smell, from the look, it gives you a much heavier, more rich nose. It's super complex. It's not super mashy or cereally, although a little bit on the finish, but there's so much to kind of, it feels like it has a higher oil content, so it kind of like coats the mouth, and there's a lot to kind of chew. Super interesting. Love it. Thank you, Maria. Okay, before we watch the first video, it's important to note this is the jump off from the National 150 Grand Prix last week. Jump clear, obviously, in the jump off. And what we're going to talk about today is, you know, like I said, but how you develop your speed. You know, the first jump off is not going to be very fast. And then, you know, I'll show you the steps to kind of figure out with a horse how to go faster. Okay, heading to the first fence and jump off. I never tried to go fast with this horse, so interesting to do. Leave a stride out, fence 1 to 2 compared to the first round. Try to be nice and efficient. You know, I see my distance, but it looks long, and then I get a little bit close. It just wasn't the right timing. I didn't have the feel right. You know, same strides as the first round here. And then in this rollback, you're seeing your distance through the gazebo, and it looks like it's crazy long, but then I get under the fence, and I waste time there. Then here, again, I go, but then I have to sit up, and I didn't get the turn right, landed too much on the outside, and then I get flat to the last. You know, quick, but not fast, mainly from the turn. Okay, this was 2 days ago. This is a power and speed 145 in the FEI. So we're going to watch this first round before we get to the jump off speed portion. And after the jump off a couple days ago, I was thinking, you know, I need to really work on those turns to get my timing right and my feel right, so that if I see it's going, I'm adjusting correctly, because I was losing too much time in those turns. But that's something you do on, you know, just by experience. And, you know, it's kind of training your eye, so when you see something in your eye, you know how to act to it. So this is the last line in the first round before we get to the jump off. She's jumping great. She's a really cool mare. So here, it's all about accelerating through this turn. I did a wider turn, but a similar strides as everyone else, and I'm still a little bit slow because of how big her stride is. Then run this down. This is where I chose to go a bit slower. I added here because I was concerned that this line would get too short. You can see how short it is, even how short I came in to the green. But then here, open it up. I do 8 strides in this swoop here. Most people did 9, almost no one did 8, and then keep going in 8 here. Only a few did 8, and 8 and 8 was super rare, and then I still was able to get the 8 to the last. So kind of figuring out how much stride I have is key here. Okay, this is the 150 speed in the FEI for today. Normal jump to fence 1 so that I could get the 8 a little bit more going. Because we have such a big stride, I didn't want to be too short. And then this 8 stride rollback is steady, but it's still an 8 stride 270 rollback. So it's crazy, her stride. The 4 came out great. Make sure I bend this 7 here to this combination. And here's a turn I was really working on from the previous days. quick turn back, and just keep going. You have the stride to do it. It might not look like it when in your eye, but you have the stride. I was hoping to do 9 here, but it was going to be too flat, so I did 10, and then accelerate, do the 8 here, but do the 8 so that I could be a little bit steady here to make this steady 6 in a way where I'm turning to the left, and I could be super quick back to this vertical here. We're turning a lot faster, and I'm really happy with this, but we're still not, because their stride is so big, we're still not as fast as other riders can be with their horses, but this is already significantly faster than a week prior, and it's only been 2 rounds. It's kind of pretty by the lake here. So I didn't do anything in between the rounds because I wanted you to see the rounds back to back to back. And I hope by doing that, you could see some of what I was talking about. It's really, when you start going fast with a horse, your eye is going to see something. And that generally isn't the fastest yet because you don't have that feel with that horse and that stride. And it's not so much training your eye necessarily. It's you might always see the same thing, but you'll translate it and you'll conjugate it. You'll see that, it's really long around the turn, but that it'll actually end up short in the same strides that you saw. So if you know that, if you see it's long in the turn, you might even be able to leave it out. And that conjugation is so important, and that's something you need to think about and you need to take care of, because that's how you can make quicker improvements. I was 4th in the Grand Prix on Sunday last week. Great result. We were super happy. But I knew I was not fast enough. And I knew it was in the turns. So the round 2 days ago, the 145 power and speed was really interesting because there was one rollback, but then the rest were big swooping turns. So that's easier on a horse like Home Run, who has a big step. But it's easier to learn in a swooping turn than in a rollback. So 2 days ago, super helpful for that. And then today in a speed, you have more, you're going faster for longer. It is more about managing how fast you go. Because it's longer, you can string things out. Where in a jump off, being shorter, it's harder to get the stride strung out. But I was super happy with the rollback from fence 2 to 3. We did 8, which is it's not the minimum. You can do 7, but in that 8, I still wasn't fast enough. So what I need to do is have a little bit of a wider track and still do 8 because her step is so big. And then I was super happy after fence 3, 4, 5AB, that rollback to the Oxer, because we're coming around that turn and it looks like I'm not going to be able to get it. And honestly, it looked like I wasn't going to get it, but I knew from the 2 rounds prior that it was possible. So I kept going. And that's where those experiences come into play that really educate you. Sorry, switching directions, switching hands, my arm's getting tired. And then later in the round, to the 3rd to last, I had a steady 6, big swooping turn, but I could do it a lot faster. I think I left out at least a stride of what I would have done if I rode it with my experience from last Sunday. But more than that, I used a better track in that speed so that with her stride, we were still faster, but we could still get the little bit steady 5 done to the combination. And that's another thing that's important, that 3rd to last, that swooping turn. What I would say is I can take a lot of liberties at that vertical. I can basically, what I mean by that is it's okay to turn so tight you kind of stop the canter and you have very little canter on landing. The reason why is because the 5 after is short. So I don't want to land with a lot of canter. If I come flying that vertical, that 5 is going to be insanely tight. And I'm going to lose more time trying to get that done. So it's actually better to, go really fast in the rollback to the vertical, land with very little step, and then the 5 is actually more normal because you actually used the fence to stop your canter or greatly reduce your canter. And so that's another method that I was playing with 2 days ago in the 145 to that green vertical. And I was playing with today to the third to last. So, you're learning your turns, but you're also learning how to optimize those little tweaks so that you can use the fences to shorten your stride, use the turn and the fences to shorten your stride where you need to, especially with the big horse. Home Run Homie has been great these 2 weeks here. I'm so proud of her. We've had her for a while, but we had some soundness issues last year that kept her out for the year, which, is a bummer, but that's kind of horses. But doing that and going through the whole process, we're stronger and better than ever. And she's, I have some high hopes for her. She's an absolutely super mare, and I'm so proud of her. The whole team at Pomponio. Eric is here this week, which is always great to have Eric. And yeah, she was awesome today.